Let me now turn this conversation over to a terrific and very able panel of journalists who will take us the rest of the way. First up, Cynthia Tucker, editorial page editor for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and a recipient this year of the Pulitzer Prize for Commentary. Please welcome Cynthia Tucker. Up next, Ray Suarez, well known to PBS viewers for his work on the News Hour with Jim Lehrer. Please welcome Ray Suarez. And Juan Williams from NPR and a contributor to Fox News Channel. Please welcome Juan Williams. Ms. Tucker will start the conversation. Governor Huckabee will answer first, and then we will move down the line, giving every candidate a chance to answer the next question first. Cynthia Tucker for Governor Huckabee.
Governor, I want to ask about race and unemployment. In 2006, the unemployment rate of black high school graduates, that's high school graduates, was 33% higher than the unemployment rate for white high school dropouts. What do you think accounts for that inequity?
Cynthia, part of it is that there is still racism in this country, and the opportunities aren't the same. Some of it has to do with the fact that there are people who unfortunately still look at a person's face and their skin, and that's something that government can't change, but leadership certainly can speak to. One of the things all of us need to be aware of is that there isn't an equal opportunity for every American yet. There just isn't. We could say there is, but it's not true. And in some cases, it's because those who try to lift themselves up find that they get, most importantly, the heel of someone's boot on top of their head every time they try to raise their head. And the real answer is to make sure that there are not only educational opportunities that bring equality, employment opportunities that ensure that people have the same chances as anybody else.
Governor, thank you. Congressman Paul.
Walter Williams, a very astute free market economist, has studied this extensively. And he has found that prior to minimum wage laws, there was no discrepancy like this. So he put a lot of blame on the minimum wage law. Once government gets interfering, this takes away opportunities. And I believe there is a lot of truth to this because it eliminates an opportunity and a chance for a marginal worker. So once again, though, the economy is supported only when you have a sound economy perpetuated by government with sound policies. You have to have sound money. You have to have minimum taxes. You have to have, wise foreign policy. But I have a bill in that might help a lot of people, black or white or whomever. I have a bill in that would immediately help these people who are trying to get a start, that they would never have to pay any taxes or payroll taxes if they just happen to be a waiter or waitress, to give them a chance to get ahead and get a good job.
Thank you, sir. Senator Brownback.
I think there's a couple of things. That are at work here. One is I think clearly we still don't have a colorblind society, and we're seeing that. We continue to see that. I think we've made some great progress. I've worked with Congressman John Lewis on a number of projects. Worked with him on this museum that I just spoke about tonight. That museum is going to happen, and we work together. But there's still racism that does exist in America. There's a second issue here, though, I think we need to address, and it's the growth of the economy, particularly where people are located. I come from a rural state of Kansas, and I've got places in my state where there's economic growth taking place, and I have places where it's not. And what you have to do to try to stimulate it is really have a tax policy, something I've talked about an optional flat tax, and maybe you put it in places where they need the economic growth to take place more than in other places. So you stimulate the growth of the economy where people are needing the most opportunities to grow. And that's something I would do and work on, and I think it is part of the issue.
Congressman Tancredo.
Okay, I just cannot agree with this race-baiting kind of comments about the reason why we have these problems. My friends, I'll tell you that I believe with all my heart. Look, why was it that in the 50s and the 40s and actually leading up into the early 60s, the ability for blacks in the United States to improve themselves economically was working? They were moving up the ladder. They had families were intact, in better shape, by the way, than most white families at that same period of time. What happened? Two things have happened to, I believe, to devastate the black community when it comes to economic opportunity. One, the welfare state. It began to pay people to not be in the home. And when that happened, what we saw is the decline in wage rates. And two, of course, is the importation of millions upon millions of low-income workers that depress the wage rates for the lowest income among us. Those two things are responsible, and it's got nothing to do with race.
Congressman Hunter.
Thank you. You know, Republicans, when we had that great matchup of a Republican majority in Congress in the 90s and President Bill Clinton, the Republicans initiated legislation 3 times to reform welfare. The first 2 times President Clinton vetoed it, and the third time he signed it and took credit for it. And something I've done every now and then in my career. When we did that, let me tell you what happened. The number of jobs of single moms, the employment rate went up. Families did much better. You had the average income go up in the communities where the welfare reform took place. You had, according to HHS, 32% increase in employment in those jobs and in those families which previously were on welfare. We did very, very well by breaking this cycle of welfare. But lastly, there's one party that is very important to jobs in the community for everybody. That's the small businessman. If we help the small businessman, and that's the Republican trademark, we'll do it.
Very much. Ambassador Keys.
Well, I have to say, I think that the most important factor in all of this does have something to do with policies that had an impact on race, but it was the disproportionately destructive impact that a lot of government programs had on the moral foundations and family structure in the black community. You talk about folks finding job opportunities. You know where a lot of black men find job opportunities these days? In prison. And that is something that reflects the reality that when you allow the family to break down, when you have government regulations that drive the father from the home, you have established the conditions for the upbringing of children to be non-productive, to be violent, to be turned in directions that will be destructive of their economic future. And when you add to that the promotion of a culture of promiscuity, a culture of selfish hedonism that leads people not to understand that marriage partnership is the most important foundation of any real economic life, then you have especially destroyed the black community. And I believe the disproportionate impact of these negative things has accounted for a lot of these bad results.